how you say, raise them later on throughout the session, or even to just a Q&A at the end. Okay, sorry. So let's get out of the slides and actually head towards the platform itself. But before we get there, I would always start with the library website. So Mabel, can I just confirm again, you can see the browser?
Still your PowerPoint.
Okay, so hold on. Let me new share and go to the browser.
Yeah.
Can you see now?
Perfect.
Okay, there we go. So this is your UCSI library website. Hopefully it's something that's very familiar to you. And as it should be if you've been playing around with different databases or looking up different books from your library. Particularly, especially since the last 2 years, I assume a lot of us have been stuck at home or stuck in our hometowns or our dormitories, and not really having the opportunity to go to the library physically. And I'm sure I'm pretty sure you've at least seen this website before. But if not, just always Google library.ucsi.university.edu.my, and then you arrive at the homepage of the library. And the most important section is definitely the e-resources section. So once you click on it, you'll find the online databases, and these are the list of all the different databases that are subscribed by your university library. Ours is here, Springer.It. But before we go there, I just want to make sure that if you are not on campus, and this is more like a public service message on behalf of the library, if you are not on campus and not using the Wi-Fi found on your campus, right, please always make sure to connect via your UCSI VPN. If you do not know how to do so, there's always a find out more here, and then I believe there are a few steps for you to install the application before you can actually go to the platforms that we will be talking about. Again, it's Springer.It, and to ensure that you gain access to the subscribed content. If you don't do so and you're using, for example, your mobile phone's data plan, and then connecting that to your laptop, or even directly searching on your tablet, for example, you will still be able to go to Springer.It. However, you will not have access to the subscribed content. So you still have all the access to all the free stuff, but not necessarily the things that have been paid for to be utilized by your library. All right, so if that's clear, let's move on now to the actual platform. So just click here, read more, and Springer.It. It will bring you here, and then once you do, you just click visit site. So do all this after you have connected your VPN. All right, so once you have arrived, this is what the platform Springer.It looks like. And if you don't remember anything else from today's training, the one thing you should probably remember is, of course, how to log in, like I showed you earlier, and or the URL of the platform itself. So it's link.springer.com, or you can always just go to Google and type in Springer.It. All right. So when you're here, if you can tell, the platform is pretty, I wouldn't call it basic, but it's simple in a sense, and it's designed intentionally as such. This is because there is no point in making it ultra fast. Sorry, am I still muted? Can you all hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just want to be careful, guys. If just be careful not to. I think there is something funny going around with Zoom today. I just saw somebody try to mute me, but I'm not sure if that's intentional or again is Zoom acting up. But let's continue. So basically, what has happened is what I'm trying to explain here is that the platform is designed intentionally to be simple, because we want it to be more of like a self-help kind of a platform, where even if you do not attend a training session like today, for example, right, you would still be able to utilize, let's say 70, 80, 90% of the functionality of it without having to have some form of formal training like this. Right, so the platform itself is divided in the home page of the Springer.It platform is divided into 3 main areas, I call it. The first one is the top, where you can find the home page button, which is here. You should be able to find this button throughout the website, regardless of which site on the platform you are on. There is a global search bar. So this is actually where we will play around with the keyword searches later. And what you put into it will define exactly how the quality of the results you get back. So it sounds pretty obvious, but even just remembering my own days back in university, what we tend to do, or what we are naturally prone to do, is to, for example, put in a question or put in a very long sentence and expect the formulation of the search query to give you results that answer the questions you're trying to put inside. But it doesn't actually work like that, and I'll explain a little bit more later. There are also quick links to, again, a home button, a list of books from A to Z, a list of the journals from A to Z, videos. There are also actually video content on Springer.It itself, although a very small portion only. And then there's a quick link for librarians. On top here, on the more top to right hand side, there are actually a button for you to sign up or log in. Then don't be confused. This one is actually for you to sign up to or create a profile on Springer.It itself. It is not necessary for you to do so, for you to access the content that you should get if you've come to the website correctly via your university library website or the VPN that I mentioned, emphasized earlier. But however, it does provide some additional benefits. So in order to do so, all you have to do is basically just click the link. And if you already have done this before, what you have to do is just basically put in your email and password. If you do not have an account, which I assume most of you don't, what you can do is a very simple process. Just put in your first and last name, an working email address that you want to use, preferably a functional email address, means something that you use often and still have access to, and then just put in a password and password confirmation. You do not have to re-authenticate the account, meaning you don't have to go to your email address, click verify, and then come back. Immediately, once you create an account, you're already logged in. Now, why is this useful, I can say, is, for example, when you create a profile for yourself on Springer.It, it does, one of the major things it does is basically to remember to associate your profile which you created onto the access that you have gained via the institution you're logging in. Now, what I mean by this is, for example, if you created your account after you've logged into the website via university library, your profile will always remember that you are a UCSI user, all right? And therefore, in the future, for example, even if you're not, for some reason, not being able to access via your university library's VPN, or using a mobile device that is, again, not covered under the VPN or not under the Wi-Fi, if you go directly to Springer.It, log in via your profile, like I have just done so, you will still be able to gain access because your profile has already been associated with the library's account, which gives you access to all of the paid for and subscribable content. All right, so that's one of the major functions. Another thing is, of course, again, it helps to remember if your browser, for example, you have cache allowed, and every time you log in, you create a bookmark. Every time you go in, you just access via the platform via the bookmark. It remembers you. You don't have to do any more authentication after that. Right, so that's one. So the next section of the platform, the homepage of the website is actually this browse by discipline section, and these are the 21, if I'm not mistaken, different subject areas that I mentioned earlier. So do not be worried if you, for example, do not see your preferred or your most interested subject area listed here, because these are just basically nomenclature decided by the platform's designers. But what it does is basically we try to accumulate all of the different sub-disciplines into these major disciplines, just so that we don't end up having to list hundreds of different disciplines on the front page itself. And I will show you those many sub-disciplines later on when we actually go through the different resources on the platform. The third section is actually this more like center right side, where you have, again, quick links to different journals, books, series. So series are basically a bunch of books that are relevant or related to each other. So, for example, they can be part of a unique series talking about a certain topic, where you have series 1, 2, 3, and 4, for example, could be written by the same author. Next, you have protocols. So these are also in the book format. So protocols are those will be interesting for those of you in the life science, chemistry, microbiology, area, because these are imagined protocols are basically step-by-step procedures on how to carry out an experiment, for example. So, for example, at sample A with reagent B under condition C for D duration, and what you will get is E. So basically, step by step, all curated by our editors from the different journals where the procedures or protocols themselves were first introduced. So basically, it's like a very concise encyclopedia. Or, well, it's not one material, it's a series of thousands of different books that explain how to do basically wet lab experiments. Then you have reference works. So reference works are basically those large encyclopedias that you might have seen the last time you entered the library. So those are typically on the top rack, where you will see A to B is one book, C to D is one book, D to E is one book, etc., etc. Those are what we call reference works. One advantage of having a digital reference book is that it gets constantly updated. Every time there is a new entry, it gets automatically updated into the reference book itself. And then lastly, for those of you who are more familiar and attend the likes of scientific conferences, for example, so you might have presented a poster before of your ongoing project or whatever, and those publications are published in the form of a conference proceeding, and which they are also technically in a book format on the Springer.It platform. All right. So there is one, other than that, there's one or two more things that I can just point out to maybe be more important, pay attention to every time you log in, which is this blue color square box over here. So if you see it in blue, in red or slightly magenta, as I see it on my platform, what it means, it just goes to show you that you have logged in correctly. But if you see it in orange or slightly yellow, that would mean that technically somewhere in the process of logging in, you might have made a mistake, or the VPN did not connect for some reason, and your account was not associated with UCSI. And that would mean that you have to trace back your steps or maybe perform it again, and just to make sure it becomes this color, as you can see on my screen. All right. The other clue is right at the bottom, where you'll be able to see that I've logged in as my account, my profile. So you may not necessarily have to log in again, as I said, but you should also be able to see your university library's name somewhere down there to again be sure that you have logged in correctly. Okay, so that is if you remember back to my slides, that's basically the first section of what we want to talk about today. So it's just about logging in. Make sure you logged in correctly, and how to stay logged in, even for example, if you've left the platform or you're using a different device, or wanting to come back more frequently without having to go through the hassle. Now we will be able to actually go through go through the actual the meat of the platform itself, so to speak, and to go and see what the different types of content are. So there are again 3 ways to do so. Like I said, there's a global search function here. You can search by browse by discipline, or you can jump immediately to the different types of content. So I think for the first option today, we will focus on journals, because that's predominantly the accessible content, particularly the subscribable content in your university. And when you do so, what happens is you will be brought to this results page. So this results page is common, meaning regardless of how you do your search queries, either via content type, subject matter, or the global search bar at the top, you will always come to this sort of results page. Just that how the results are filtered depends on obviously the method that you are using. So now, if you can see, I filtered only journals. All right, and what it shows me now, there are 3,780 results within. That means there are 3,780 journals currently published online in Springer.It. As I mentioned to you, you roughly have about 1,000 plus subscribable ones, 1,000 plus fully open access ones, and the rest remain either no longer active, meaning they could be really old journals that are no longer active, that have probably stopped publishing new articles a couple of years ago, or have been discontinued or moved to a different publisher's platform since then. And those make up basically the rest of the what you call it, the journals inside. But I would say For the good part, you have obviously more than average in terms of the number of content, journal content accessible, and definitely a majority of the more recent and relevant content from your library. Right, that's what they did. They wanted to make sure that you gain access to the more important stuff rather than necessarily everything, which may include very, very old stuff. So first thing to remember every time you're here in this what you call it results page is to uncheck this box that says include preview only content. All right, so when you uncheck that, what will happen is that whatever results are then returned or left in the results page are basically articles, journals, books, or whatsoever that you have full access to. Right. So if you kept that box checked, it will mean it will also give you the results that are potentially behind a paywall. Or for example, like I said, it could be a very old journal that is no longer published, but is still relevant, and but you still do not have access to it, right? So my best advice for whatever you do every time you search for something is to uncheck that box, all right? So that you don't encounter the frustration of ever, how do I say, looking for something, seeing that it is interesting to you, but when you click on it, results in you asking you to pay some money or whatever lah. All right, so do that, and then we'll carry on with how we further surmise, or how you say, filter the results that we want. So just now we saw, I think on the pie chart, I think life sciences or some of the more popular ones, the popular topics in UCSI. So I'll just use that as an example. And here's a good chance for me to show you the various sub-disciplines within one of those major discipline areas. So under the refined by sub-discipline filter, there are actually very many sub-disciplines. So all the way from things from animals to plants, to biodiversity, ecology, how you say, internal, what you call it, microbiology, environmental science, neurobiology, etc., etc. So if you worry that you don't see the topic in the homepage, this is not necessarily that it's not inside Springerling. It's just that it's considered as a subcategory or a sub-discipline. So perhaps for the interest of today's today's training, I'll just randomly choose one. I chose applied microbiology. And what happens is then it returns to me only 6 journals that are relevant towards those filters. So it is a journal, it's under life science as a major category, and then sub-discipline is applied microbiology. So let's go ahead and see what a journal looks like. Oh, sorry, before we do that, just want to show you an example, the difference between what you would look like, what you would see that looks like more like a subscribable content, which is the first few ones up here, the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the ones below that have this sign says open access. So these are those that are free. And if you're not familiar with the term open access, it basically means that the content is publicly viewable because the authors themselves have paid for the publication of the content to be made publicly viewable throughout the world, regardless of your association to any institution, research body, or if you're a student of certain university, etc., etc. It doesn't matter, all right? I guess if you're interested to know more about the open access aspect of it, we'll try to touch some of it. If not, you can always ask questions to me later. But let's take this first journal, Biotechnology Letters, as an example to showcase to you what journal content looks like, what a journal looks like on the platform. So for those of you who are familiar, journals are basically periodicals, right? Periodicals means content that is published periodically, obviously, within a calendar year. So some journals, if you're familiar, publish maybe once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, or even monthly. We even have some very popular ones. For example, our very own Nature journal, which is published every week. So these are what we call periodicals. Basically, journals are where the state of the art, the absolute the most advanced discoveries of a particular topic is discussed in the journal itself by publishing articles in it. All right. So journals if I guess for context of students, this is where you go and do your literature reviews for you to identify and to give you a sense on where is the boundary, so to speak, where is the state of the art of the boundary for a certain topic, to understand, okay, this is where the advancement of the science is currently, right, so to speak. How do we, let's talk a little bit more about the homepage of the journal itself. So you can see there's the front cover here. If you were to see it in the library in a physical form, that's the title, obviously. You can read, there are quick links to the editorial board, aims and scope, and journal updates, and these are very important, and I will explain why shortly. But just below that, you'll be able to see very basic information on what the actual journal is about. So of course, you can tell a little bit by the title itself, biotechnology letters. So obviously, it's going to, the articles within it discusses about biotechnology related, but what within it, right? So it's obviously biotechnology itself, it should be a very broad based subject again, but it's important to identify what specifically is being discussed in each and every one of those journals. So you can see some of that information here, but more importantly, what you should do is actually go to the aims and scope. And the aims and scope tells you two things. Number one, for you as a reader, it helps you again identify what are the specific topics that you could find within the articles that are being published inside. And on the flip side, if you are a budding author, that means you're a researcher currently working on a manuscript, if you would like to submit your manuscript for publication in a certain journal, the aims and scope provides you a rough guideline to identify whether or not your manuscript matches the content that the editors in this journal is looking for, right? So again, as a reader, it helps you to identify, okay, will I find what I want to read in this journal? For an author, what you will find through the aims and scope is whether or not your manuscript that you're currently working on matches this journal and the types of topics that it is discussing, because that is how the editors of the journal decides whether or not it would accept, for example, any researcher's manuscript to be published within it. Right, so it's very important to read through the aims and scope section. It tells you a lot on the types of articles itself, so not just the topics, like for example, does the journal talk about broad-based views? Does it take technical papers? Does it only take review papers, etc., etc., etc.? So it's very important to read this. Often something that is skipped or skimmed on because everyone tends to rely on just the summary part of it. But I feel it's really important to understand the aims and scope. Particularly, again, as a reader, if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. So this, again, is one tip where I would say, when you are trying to get a sense of the whole major topic that you're trying to learn about, like say, for example, you've just begun your project or your assignment and you're not quite sure where to begin reading or looking for the resources that you want. The aims and scope of different journals, once you identify the journals, obviously through filtering some major topics, major disciplines and whatnot, helps you to identify, okay, in the area of the discussion of a certain scientific field, what is this journal discussing and what are the areas that are currently being worked on at the moment. So for seasoned scientists, obviously that's why they not only utilize journals to get their work out into the world for others to read it, but also to gain an understanding of where currently we are at in terms of the discovery of a certain scientific field, right? So it gives you an understanding from that perspective. Next is the editorial board. So the editorial board is basically gives you the credentials, so to speak, of the journal itself, right? So you want to know, for example, how good is a journal? Should you trust it? Should you believe in it? And that is then reflected on the people who work on the journal itself. So, and those are represented by the editors, the editor-in-chiefs, the publishing editors, the executive editors, the guest editors, and whatnot. And so, most often than not, if you are a researcher or a reader of a particular topic very often, and you tend to follow or recognize certain names, if those names show up in certain journals that you are reading, that tends to give you a sense of how you say, not connection, but more of the sense of like, if I've often read papers from a certain researcher, then obviously if he is on the editorial board of a certain journal, then that journal should obviously be relevant to you, because you might be following that train of thought, that study or that scientific area, and the researcher who often you are reading his work on sits on certain journals. That just shows that that journalism might be relevant to you and should be reading it as well. Again, similarly for authors, if you are working on a manuscript and you often cite certain other researchers, and if you see their names because they are, probably the leading lights in their field, then it just gives you a sense of how do I say this? A sense of assuredness that the journals that you're reading is again relevant to you, and then you might also think about this could be the home for your manuscript as well, because it's discussing the same sort of topics, right? So those again are just some not direct linkages on how you would utilize a journal, but basically giving you tips on, okay, this is how I identify whether or not should I read this paper or should I not read this paper, or should I spend time here or not spend time here. There are also some, so to speak, performance matrices that could be important to you as again a reader or a writer, an author. You can identify the impact factor of it, although I think there's large debate going around these days, understanding on whether or not impact factors should be your most important factor in deciding whether or not to publish or to trust this paper. Obviously, impact factors is a very traditional way of establishing the quality of a certain journal, because it means that other people who cite the papers from this journal itself are reaffirming the sense that, okay, they agree with the findings because they then cite them, right? And they publish their own papers either in the same journal or in different journals elsewhere. And then looking at the number of downloads, it gives you a sense of how many people around the world are like you, reading the contents in it, because it is important, it's exciting, it's a new and burgeoning area of the subject area that you could be researching on, for example. If you scroll down a little, you can see that the latest issue is this one, current volume 44, issue 3. So again, a periodical has different issues throughout the year, and the volume typically dictates the year of the journal itself. So this one is probably going around for 44 years. And the recent one is the third issue. So if you click into it, right, that's where it will bring you to the actual articles within the journal itself. Right, so different articles. As you can see, this is a review paper. These are review papers. These are original research papers, etc., etc. And these are the actual resources that are subscribed, and the ones that you can go into to utilize. So let's do that right now. Let's just pick the first one. All right, so this paper, this particular article that sits within Biotechnology Letters, was published on 27th January 2022. And the title of the paper itself is Design Protein Multi-Mess. Well, I'm not going to go into it. And these are the three authors of the paper itself. You will notice that the one with the little envelope sign on top of next to their name, that is the corresponding author. So the corresponding author is basically the person who is the one that who submitted the paper to be published, and also worked with the peer reviewers and the editors throughout the whole peer review process. They are also the people that you want to connect with and talk to in email if you wanted to ask questions about the paper. So you could, for example, you wanted to double check something with their protocols, or how they did the experiment, or maybe ask a few more questions on thinking to collaborate with them in the future. And that provides you this functionality here with this envelope, gives you their either their direct contact details through email, not phone, or it gives you a link to a journal editor manager, which will put you in touch with that person. Right. So if you scroll down below, it gives you a few more matrices, like this paper has been read 769 times. Right. And then a quick link to cite the article, which is actually all the way at the bottom. So you can cite this article manually, obviously, or you can always, download the file or download the citation and put it into a reference manager program like BitCube, Mendeley, or EndNote, and obviously you could do that for you. depending on what you have accessible to you. But going back to the actual article itself at the top, this is where you can actually start to read the actual paper. Right? So this is why you came to Springer.It itself or any other database. This is what you're essentially looking for. You can see that the papers are arranged in such as abstract, introduction, etc., and there are quick quick links on the right-hand side to jump to different sections of the paper. This just helps you to read it more quickly, so to speak. All right, and the version of the paper that you are seeing now through my screen, all right, is called what we call the HTML version. So basically, this is the live version. Obviously, you need to be connected to the internet, and that's how we got here. And you're clicking through the different links. It's live, right? One of the great advantages of having this version or viewing it like this is the the sorting of the article, the way it is presented to you, the user interface. It is done depending on the device that you are utilizing. So, for example, if you're mirroring me right now, and while listening to me, you're clicking around on the platform itself. If you're using a different device, so I'm using a standard 14-inch laptop, and maybe you could be using a desktop with a 20-inch screen, you will notice the arrangement of the content on the page on your screen is slightly different. It's the HTML version allows for maximization of the easiness of reading the material on the device that you're using. So if I were to use my phone, for example, it's a very small screen, instead of perhaps having the way it's arranged here with maybe 6 to 10 words per line, it could be somewhere maybe in 3 to 5 words per line, and arranged slightly differently with the UI arranged in a way that is more efficient for the screen acreage that you're using on the device. All right, so that's one way. Also, obviously, if you have things like figures, which are pretty important to I guess more on the life science area typically. So for example, you have slides under the microscope, or you have images under very sharp and detailed images due to certain dyes, or you're looking at microorganisms. Those details are often found in greater detail via the HTML version, where you'll be able to see the figures in the full size itself, rather than being compressed typically. So for example, this one, where I think this is an image of different insects or fleas or different figures. These are the actual files that have been provided by the authors themselves when they submitted the manuscript for publication. Right. So this is also where if there are, for example, there are links, live links that the author want to direct you to, or to place emphasis on, or to have greater clarity, I would encourage you to use the HTML version. As compared to, let's go back to the PDF version, which you can actually download and read offline by clicking this download PDF button. So normally, I would say in 99% typical cases, the first thing we will do is actually to download the PDF. Now, there are advantages, obviously, to the PDF. First of all, it's machine readable in a sense. It's very, very small file, easy to access. Almost any device, any smartphone or any device can open a PDF file. It also comes with metadata. So metadata again is basically the think of it as the DNA of the PDF file itself. So it's not just a plain Jane piece of paper, but it also comes with all of the built-in information about the PDF itself. So again, on the citation aspect, the different links to different articles cited within it, the images, and also other information about the authors and whatnot. Right. So when we tend to download the PDF, it's because we want an offline copy. We can obviously read it when we're not connected to the internet. We don't have to come to Springer.Link again to read it. And you can obviously print it if you want. So another great functionality of resources, subscribe or not, in Springer.Link is that there is no digital rights management. And what that means is I can demonstrate that by basically highlighting and copying and pasting the material of that into other places like Word, Excel, etc. Now, I'm not emphasizing this to talk about plagiarism or to encourage plagiarism, but what I'm trying to say is that it provides you the flexibility to maximize your utilization of the resource itself. In the sense that, for example, you wanted to cite a certain paragraph in your assignment, right? And you could do so more easily, obviously, if you had functionality such as this. And even then, if you were to utilize a third-party application, so again, like Mendeley, for example, if you wanted to do the site, you wanted that program to do the citation for you, it would have to be, all restraints of the PDF itself would have to be removed. And again, all of the subscribable and even those open access content is DRM free, digital rights management free. So great news for if you're a student, for example, like I just given a scenario, but also if, for example, you're a lecturer and if you wanted to include, this paper, this paragraph, or a certain image, a certain formula in the PDF, and you wanted to export that into your, your next tutorial slide, you could do so without, having to obviously crop. Obviously, having to crop the file and then just paste it on your what you call it, PowerPoint or whatnot. So that will actually make it blurry, become pixelated, and this allows you to I guess again maximize the functionality of the paper itself. But yeah, other than that, our PDFs are not not black and white. They also come in color, which is great, especially useful again for if you want to look at images. But again, for example, this image that we saw earlier in the HTML, that one you're looking at the full resolution of the image. Here you're looking at a compressed version because it's a PDF. And if you want to utilize it, you can't just copy and paste it. You can't do it like that. You have to crop it, print screen, copy, and then either you blow it up or you make it small, you shrink it. The clarity of the image is obviously jeopardized in that sense. So these are just some of the pros and cons of doing so. Another great thing is that because again it's DRM free, you can also share the content. So sharing is actually, there are two ways of doing it. You can obviously share this file, because it's DRM free again. You can actually print the file as many times as you want. You can print as many pages as you want. You can print specific pages, all of the pages, etc., etc. And you can share a file, etc., etc., as long as it's all within the permitted rights use, which is basically within the context of teaching and learning and doing research. And then the second, and alternatively to sharing the PDF, if you wanted to share the HTML version, you can scroll right to the bottom of the HTML page and click this Get Shareable link. So this is pretty cool. This is it seems very simple and basic, but what it essentially does is, let's say because you're a UCSI user, you have access to this paid content. But you may be discussing certain things with a collaborator or a different student for a different university that may not have this access to this article because it's behind a paywall and that university doesn't subscribe to it. But nonetheless, you wanted to share, you want to talk about it, you want to share it because you're discussing something, you're working on some project. What you could do is actually just copy this link, put it into your Facebook post, your blog post, your WhatsApp, your email and whatnot. And on the other side, when your friend clicks on it, they'll be able to see the live version. So basically the HTML version of the article again, all right? But they won't be able to own or save a copy of it. So that again protects you from copyright infringement, but ultimately aids in the promotion of open research, open science. So as a global international publisher, we obviously are trying our best to promote research, to make it as open, as publicly available as possible to everyone. Of course, there are still certain commercial limitations to that extent. We still have to protect the copyrights of the authors themselves, who obviously wrote these papers, but we want to make it accessible to as many people, regardless of their status of being associated with a university or not. So if you have circumstances like that, I can encourage you to do it that way, so that again they get the full definition and the full access to the paper itself, and that really helps to promote inter-university, inter-research group collaboration, or basically just if you just have the interest of just talking about some topic, that's one good and official proper way of sharing the material without infringing on copyright in that sense. Right? So essentially this is what a journal looks like. So where we started was from the homepage, if you remember earlier. We clicked on going to journals as a type of resource. we did some filtering and filtered a certain subject discipline that we were interested to look at. We went into that journal. We learned about what the journal homepage has and what are some of the important information that you could look out for if you were, again, a reader or an author. We've gone into one of the volumes and the issues of the paper. And then finally, we're in the article of, we're looking at one actual article from the journal itself, right? So I think I'll just take a very short pause here and just quickly ask Mabel if there are any questions up to this point.
So far, I don't see any question in the chat box. I think because you explained it very clearly.
Yeah, thank you for the compliment, Mabel. No problem. So yeah, so okay, if that's it, I'll just quickly move on. So basically, up to this point, what I've showed you is, how to search for something in one way, and you've already seen how a journal article looks like, and these are the majority of the things, the resources that you will mainly be wanting to look at. Now let's go back to the homepage by clicking on the Springer link button and explore the other ways on how to do research, and then we'll start to touch on more of the functionality, the customizable functionality on how to refine your search and to get what you really want. So next way I'll be searching is, just to give you an example, I'll use the browse by discipline section and I'll click computer science, right? And as you can see, again, I'll uncheck this box to make sure that anything I get, any of the results that are returned are basically things that I can fully access. I have the full text of it, not just the abstract itself, right? Then maybe let's talk, instead of looking at a journal, now maybe let's look at a book, for example, right? So I'll filter books, then I'll just take one example, which is artificial intelligence, let's just say, right? So here you will see the books, the results are as such, similar to how you saw it earlier. And the only difference is that, again, on your side, if you're doing this, you would likely only be able to see open access books because UCSI is not currently purchased any of our paid books, so to speak. But nonetheless, there are actually thousands of open access books, and more are being published every day. So it's not like you do not have any access to anything. You actually have access to plenty of books on Springer.It itself, regardless of your university subscription or not. All right, particularly in areas that are fast moving. So again, the likes of computer science, medicine, and things related to COVID-19, for example, things like that. Springer Nature makes it a point to try and make those content freely accessible, because we understand how it does have an impact on speeding up the discovery of new innovation, discoveries, on how it has a general major impact on daily life throughout the world. So we try our best to publish content in very important areas to make it as open or open access as possible. And you will find instances like that when you play around with the platform. But here I wanted to take the opportunity to explain a little bit more about the search result page. So first of all, you can see, apart from the filtering based on the content type, discipline, subdiscipline, and language, obviously limited to language, English, unless you speak German or some other languages, which by all means do so, because we actually have quite a large German language portfolio, Springer being a very old European company. So what you will see is there are a few more things that you can play around with here. So this is the RSS feed link. So what if, for those of you who are familiar, what it does is that, for example, after I've refined my search, right? Let's say I play around with this, I figure out like, okay, this is what exactly I want now, right? And I've narrowed my search to, like, let's say 50 results. And these are the best 50, the most accurate 50 articles or books or journals that I always want to read. But I don't want to keep coming back here to check it every day, like, oh, has there been new articles added? Has there been new books added relevant to my search query that I've already predefined very carefully? And you can use the RSS feed to do so. So remember, when you registered your created profile for yourself, if you've done so, the other function is to have this RSS feed, which means basically every time an article or a book, any kind of resources is added to the platform, published online, right, and is relevant to the search query. That means if you did the same search again, it would show up right? An email notification will be sent to your email that you have used to create your profile to alert you on the event that something has been published in this query set that you've created, right? So imagine you've done everything already. You played around with the filters. You like all your your search query terms, and you again arrive about 50 to 100, which is usually the optimum in my opinion. And you've read all of them already. And now you're just basically, I just want to know anything new that's been added to it over time. And that is how the RSS feed can help you to do so, by alerting you via email, right? So do that. Or for example, if you wanted to just manage the list of results more manually in some way, you can actually download the entire list via a CSV file on Excel, but it's limited to the first 1,000 results, because typically you don't want, I can't find a reason why you will want to have a list of more than 1,000 results, because typically beyond, I already say typically beyond the first 100, it no longer is that relevant to what you should be looking for. Or if you've not done so, then probably you've not filtered your search results enough to get the most accurate out of the platform, right? So you can download it and then manually play with it in the sense, and maybe make notes that I've read this before, I've read this, not yet read this, need to consider this, or what kind of action things you want to do, or play around with Excel in that sense. You can also filter the results by newest first or oldest first. Now, why is this important? I guess there are certain circumstances, like let's take humanities, for example. I'm not an expert in the field, but for example, if you were in sociology and you wanted to identify who was the first person to coin a certain term, or to discover a certain instance, or I don't know how you call it, right? And the one way of doing that is obviously going to oldest first, right? So to discover who is the first person to talk about this topic. So maybe not so relevant in like high-tech things, like in computer science, again, artificial intelligence, because usually anything other than anything beyond last year is irrelevant, outdated, not important anymore, or it's become not relevant because the technology has moved on so quickly. And then in those instances, you either be reading what's the newest first, or you can play around with the date of publish. So you wanted to find a certain discovery that, what was the state of the science from a certain period, from the early 2000s to early 2010s, for example, right? So you can narrow your search by doing this in between way. So you can change it from saying like year 2000 to 2010s and submit. And then it would narrow for you the results of whatever you have searched for. Okay, so those are just some of the additional features that you can play around with. And the whole goal of it, like I said, is to basically get this number, in my opinion, to get this number to about 100 or 50. The smaller, the better, but obviously not until like 5. Then I think then you've over queried and you've over limited yourself to what is available to you. And the reason being is because, like I said, it's not probably feasible for you to want to read 2,627 different articles, journals, or books, right? Whatever you are researching on tends to be a rather niche in that sense. Unless you're just trying to get a general overview, then yes, you will be jumping from one journal to another journal just to get a sense of what is going on out there. But if you're researching on a very particular topic, more likely than not, you're trying to talk about a certain niche, right? And that niche, you need to refine your search, not just on Springer.It platform, imagine that, but on all the different online databases out there, right? So obviously the results on Springer.It only return those that are published in Springer.It. It's different than using Google Scholar. And of course, if you go to different platforms, so like the Wiley Online Library, Science Direct, Taylor and Francis Online, Oxford Online platform, or whatever it is, you will only be getting the results from there. And therefore, you wouldn't want to spend too much time in reading unnecessary information. So the goal is to get it down. So the next thing you could do is basically to refine your search from a search query term. So going back to the home page, we can play around with it. So maybe I take one example of a search query that is more, I would say, happening today. So what is new? So let's say let's take nanotechnology, right? Hopefully I spelled this right. So by just using one term, obviously nanotechnology is a very broad term, right? And what I would caution against is it's better to have 3 to 5 individual keywords rather than an entire sentence, particularly because sentences can have connectors. And connectors, what I mean by connectors are things like and, or, is, with, etc., etc. So this is not an English class, but this is important because that's how the formulation, I think of it as the very basic AI of how the search bar works. If you copy and paste your, for example, your thesis project into the search bar, which we tend to do, I'm not gonna lie, I did it when I was a student, into Google or Google Scholar, that might try to return to you everything in the World Wide Web, trying to answer that question. But if you did it in Springer.It, what you would try to do is you would try to search every one of the articles inside it and return to you as long as it has that word inside. Then it also takes into account the connectors. So the things like and. So for example, if I did nanotechnology alone, I get 370,000, right? But if I took nanotechnology and robots, right, you will find that now the number has shrunk to 6,000 plus one, from 370,000 to 6,000 plus. This is because what it is trying to do now is to search nanotechnology and the word robots must be both in the same resource together, right? So if you had put a sentence inside that has many ends, what you would tend to do is you would try to figure out like, okay, you want an overlap of nanotechnology and robots and something else and something else and something else. And often than not, likelihood is very low to be able to have that, and then your results will get 0, or you can't get anything at all, right? So the other, that's what I suggest is you play around with 3 to 5 keywords whenever you're playing around with your keyword search. Another reason why I say 3 to 5 is because actually every time a book is published or an article is published, the authors themselves are asked by the editors to actually identify with the manuscript itself, with the paper they are trying to publish, with 3 to 5 keywords. So for example, if you're writing a manuscript and you're going to publish soon, and you've successfully passed the peer review process and you're about to click launch, right? You will be asked, like, if you were to define your paper, what are the 5 words you can define your paper with? And that is also takes into account when you're doing the searching, because we tag those articles with those keywords in the metadata of the papers themselves. So the global search bar here trawls the entire platform, all of the millions of documents inside, and then returns you the matches that have been predefined in the paper itself, and also on top of that, the actual words that are inside the article. So if the article has a lot of the word robots, and nanotechnology inside, it will obviously be written here, right? So again, simple, and I guess you've probably heard this 1,000 times. This sounds rather basic, but don't copy and paste an entire sentence or a question into it, right? Don't do that, because that has a different meaning altogether. If we go to, sorry, not advanced help, wrong way, search help, you will find that it actually tells you certain things. It gives you certain hints, the exact things that I'm just telling you. So if you put in, for example, question mark as a wildcard, all right, it means that it's trying to complete the last word in your sentence with any alphabet that matches, with any alphabet that potentially matches a word that has that alphabet. Sorry, I hope I'm explaining this correctly. So in the example given here, when you, take the word heal, for example, H-E-A-L. If you put H-E-A question mark, the website in the results section will give you anything that has H-E-A followed by another letter that could be potentially any word. So it could be heal, could be heat, could be head. And the reason you might use this in a real use case is, for example, you might be trying to spell, but are not sure of a certain spelling for a certain very unique word. So more often than not, these are, for example, like medication. So there are some words that are written in, for example, UK English versus American English, spelled slightly differently, but has obviously the same meaning and is the same word, but spelled slightly differently. So those are some of the real use cases that you would use the question mark wildcard. Instead of what you would perceive as, if I put in a few words plus a question mark at the back, you click enter, it's trying to answer that question. No, it's not going to do that, I can assure you. It might work in thing again, like something like Google Scholar, right? Because the formulation, the coding behind the search bar is different. Another wildcard is the asterisk sign. And asterisk signs, basically, it helps to return, as you see here, an asterisk entered as part of search is interpreted as a substitute for any number of letters. So this one, again, the asterisk you put in, it can give you any, if you spell it with HEA, for example, it will return things like head, heat, heated, health, heating, and so on. So again, this helps if you know of a certain word that you want, but you're rather a little bit unsure of the spelling itself, because it can be spelled in a certain way. For example, is it more often than not, it's usually like a drug name that it has a, for example, a generic name versus a commercial name versus the original name. So things like that are where examples where wildcards like this can be used. Or if you have certain terms, like you have 4 out of 5 search queries that you're very sure you want to revolve around, but then that last one, you want to play around with it. And you can use the wildcard in that sense, right? And then there are more obvious or easy examples like or, not, and and, where connectors like these are very often found in sentences. And if you put them in, like I said, so and is easy to understand. So you put 2 together, then what you're looking for is a overlap of that 2 words within the same article, right? And you must use the capital of N or the N symbol. So I think that's shift 7. Not means you want a certain term, but not maybe a certain subset of that term. So in the example given here is wheat. So wheat is like a type of food, right? And then, but not maize. So corn, for example, could be considered as part of wheat, but you don't want the term maize in it. So you can say like, I want mouse, but not mice. I want tomato, but not I want vegetables, but not tomato, for example. You can try that. And then you can use the or operator. So or basically enlarges your, instead of makes your result smaller, it makes it wider. And is often used in situations whereby you have, again, the three search queries that are very sure, but now you want to expand that with different, you're looking at 2 different trajectories of search queries where, let's say again, nanotechnology, robots, and then you can use or drones, and then that's one line of search. The other one you can try nanotechnology, robots, or remote control or something, or cars, like that. So it helps to expand your search in that sense, and gives you again more flexibility in your search queries. So that is and everything. If you can't, if I'm explaining it too complicatedly, just go to the search help. It explains everything to you, including other things like phrase matching, language and stemming, things like that, to help you define your search much better, instead of just putting in random words and then you think that will work, and then not really getting what you're searching for, or getting frustrated at the end of it. Right? So ultimately, what I again would recommend highly is when you search for something, or let's say drones, what you want is to get the number down as low as possible to around 50 to 100. That's where you really go in and actually read the articles. All right, go in. Once you have defined them, read the articles and say, okay, then you will start to understand and spend time there. Okay, should I read just the abstract or the whole paper? Okay. Then lastly, just before we end, I'm conscious of time. I just wanted to show an example of what books will look like, because books represent the other half of the formats of content on Springerling itself. So when you go into a book is, obviously a book is a book, but how it is different in terms of format on Springerling is that instead of journals, you have each journal, main title, then you have the different issues because it's published as a periodical. Books, it's published once and that's often it, right? Unless it's an encyclopedia where you add individual, add individual chapters. Books are divided into different chapters. And you do not actually have to download the entire book to read just the first 3 pages if you wanted to. Our books are divided into chapters where you can download the individual PDF for that chapter alone. So again, the PDFs are DRM free. Similarly, right, you can just download just that chapter if you wanted to. Right? Some of them, if the books are not long, if the chapters are not long, so usually things like what we call them. There are some books that are usually around 50 to 100 pages. Sometimes the entire text of it is in the HTML format. But for books that have hundreds and thousands of pages, more likely you would have to actually download the PDF to be able to read the material itself, like over here. Okay, same thing, it's DRM free, so you can highlight, you can paste, you can copy. The links are alive, and you can click on them, and you can obviously share the PDF itself. So that's the slight difference between what a book looks like and a journal article. And to know more about a book, you can click on About This Book here, where you can. This introduction part is usually where if you're holding the book physically in your hand, you'll be on the cover of the back page, the back cover of the book, explaining to you more like the synopsis of the book itself. And these are those keywords that I talked about earlier. When you do your search, these are the keywords that have been predetermined by the authors themselves who wrote this book, what this book is talking about. You can get some information about who are the editors or who are the chapter editors for the book, where they're from, what are their credentials, and also understand, get things like, for example, this is relevant to engineering, what's its ISBN, or is it part of a certain series that you should also be reading the other books from? Okay, so yeah, I think a little bit running short of time, I think due to technical issues we faced earlier. But basically, that is what Springerling is. It should not be difficult to use. And basically, if you play around with it for 10 minutes, even without listening to me today, you should get the hang of most of it. Ideally, for me, is to make sure that you face least obstacles and face less instances of you hitting a paywall most of the time. So again, just remember every time when you search for something, uncheck the include preview only box to only get back the results that are fully downloadable, fully text accessible to you as a user from UCSI. And I think with that said, I think we can just stop here and maybe go to Q&A if there are any.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. Thank you so much for your explanation on Springerling platform. So everyone, if you have any question, please type in chat box, or you can unmute yourself because this is GoToMeeting. Sorry, it's not GoToMeeting. It's Zoom.
Zoom.
And you can, it's Zoom. You can unmute yourself and ask question if you have any. But before we wait for that, maybe I have a question for Kent. Because you show us how to search the relevant articles or materials for our research. So there are many filters, many ways to find those kind of articles. So based on your experience, what is your best way to find the materials or topics that you are looking for, just based on your experience?
Yeah, good question. I think there are two ways of looking at it. First of all, if you already know what you want to look for, then I think the most obvious solution is to use the search bar and play around with the search term queries, because you already know, like, okay, I want to look for articles relevant to these 5 terms, for example, or these 3 terms, right? You already have a very clear indication in your mind. You know what you want to look for. Alternatively, on the completely opposite side, if you are just starting to figure out what you want to look for, then it's better to use this browse by discipline or going by the content side, because you're trying to explore what are the boundaries you're looking at, right? In terms of the science or the area that you want to learn about. So of course, I think like it is equal the same of whether you browse by discipline or journal or book, content type first, because ultimately you end up on the same page. But what it helps is to, okay, if you are looking for research content, then obviously stick with journals, because books more often than not are designed in a way when they're written to discuss fundamental aspects about a certain topic, meaning to say that books are focusing on things that have already been discovered, assessed, and are generally accepted as the how you say, are generally accepted throughout the scientific community that is correct. Journals, on the other hand, are talking about the latest discoveries. So you're always pushing the boundaries of the certain research itself. And these journals are where the discoveries are published, shared about. So you want to find the cutting edge, use journals, obviously, for research. For books, more for, obviously, for things like students or just the everyday teaching and learning, trying to understand the fundamentals of it. And if you're just trying to learn about the area, the topic, then, browse by discipline, play around with the sub-disciplines, and then you will come across certain terms that you like. And then you will realize, okay, this is what I should be focusing on. Then you go back to the global search bar and play around with those queries to finally get, okay, everything what I most likely want to look for, will be playing around with these few words, few terms, and then refine the search from there. That has been my experience.
Yeah, I think that is very good sharing, because based on different scenarios or criteria, then you may use different kind of filters or search functions. Yeah. At this moment, I don't see any question in the chat box. Anyone wants to ask Kent directly, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, no worries. Don't be shy. Or
don't be shy.
Don't have to worry about anything. I'm not a professor or anything. I'm pretty sure some of you in the room are more qualified than me, that's for sure. But in any case, just wait a few minutes for anybody who wants to have a question. If not, we can always go to the exciting part later.
Yeah, I just want to apologize for the hiccups that we had in the beginning. We didn't know what happened on Zoom, but also luckily later on the problem solved and we can last until the end.
Yeah, so thanks for having the patience and staying with us.
Yeah. Right. I don't see Okay, I've got a question here. Are there resources for social science and liberal arts? And where can I find them?
You can find them on Springer. There will be some. I would say, I admittedly, Springer is not the most active publisher in the world for that area. And it's also not because we don't want to publish, but because there is a lack of things to publish from that area as compared to, for example, tech or medicine. So again, those in areas of computer science, AI, technology, engineering, medicine, those always typically have a lot to publish because the nature of the science itself, the nature of the topic, where discoveries are found every day. Like today, there's a discovery of a new molecule. No, I shouldn't say that. There's a discovery of a new virus or a new microorganism, right? That happens a lot. But in liberal arts or in creative arts or in culture or in sociology, that sector or that area of the humanities and social science side doesn't produce that much of content. Not much is coming out of it because your area doesn't heavily rely on publication as a means to communicate the discoveries within it, right? So you don't necessarily publish a paper about how to play a piano that often, for example, or how to draw a magazine, or how to how to do certain animations. Whereas in fact you just produce the works and that becomes the publication itself. So there's not much technical papers about that, but you would find that still, if there are any under things like the humanities areas in Springerling, because one of the sub imprints in Springer is Palgrave Macmillan, and Palgrave Macmillan was was a standalone publisher that is very strong in the humanities and social science side. That covers, the areas of liberal arts and things like music and dance and culture and in history and whatnot. So it is in there. Can find some in Springerling. I said some, and it will probably be not as much as the hard sciences stuff, and not by, I wouldn't say it's by Springer Nature's fault, so to speak. It's just the nature of the sciences themselves on how they evolve over time, and that how the different sciences utilizes journal publication, book publication as a means to share the information, share the knowledge. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, but definitely you can find our social science subjects or other humanities subjects on the filter bar on the left-hand side under disciplines.
Yeah, I remember we've had authors regarding from music side before, from dance before. Yeah, definitely from culture we have. But again, they won't be as plentiful, so to speak, as compared to things like, again, from engineering or mathematics and stuff like that, because scientists from that area, well, we call it, social scientists from that area don't perform as much research in that sense, as compared to their counterparts in the physical sciences.
But anyway, you can go to that discipline, and if you click on social science, and actually you can find more sub-disciplines underneath. Okay. All right. I don't see any more question, and we are a little bit overrun. So Ken, how about we just go forward?
Sure.
To the secret word game. Before we ask everybody to type in the secret word that they guess from you, Ken, do you have more tips for the audience?
I know I said it a few times. It's a one-word word, and it's obviously related to what we discuss quite heavily about in the training, or something that I've mentioned, spent quite a few minutes on in the training itself. So yeah, I wish everybody good luck. This is the first time we're trying something like this, to be honest, but hopefully it catches on, and it'll be interesting to see what you guys catch it or not, whether what I mentioned. So I think maybe you need to count down, and then you can start counting and start typing it in the chat stuff.
Okay, so I think that we can just open the floor for you to submit the word. So I will just open now, and we will close in around 10 seconds or 20 seconds, because the first one get it correctly will get the prize. But of course, sorry, Ken, you go ahead.
So what you need to do is to type the word in the chat, and the first one to register that word typed in correctly, spelled correctly, obviously, will be the winner. But there's also a potential that maybe no one was listening and no one could catch the word, so they might also not be a winner in that sense. That would be quite sad. I guess I give another hint if that happens after the first round of trying.
Yeah, I know the word. So I heard Ken mention it several times. So
should be easy now.
Guess. Yeah, just guess. You can submit more than once if you don't get the right person to answer it correctly.
So okay, can begin now.
Yeah, I see the first submission.
We won't say anything until we won't say anything until we see that word it comes out. So go ahead and try, guys. You can try as many times as you want.
Yep.
It's only one word.
I give it a minute.
Yeah, it's one word. I said it a few times, and it was somewhat of a focus of the talk just now. No, I don't see the word yet. Keep going.
It's not too common.
Not too common, but not too unique of a word either. Not yet, not yet. I don't see yet.
Still no.
Nothing.
Well, Ken, do you think you should give the first
Okay, I'll give another.
letter?
I'll give one clue first. There are two clues to give out.
Yes.
First clue is that it is 10 alphabets long. So the word has 10 alphabets in it. So for those of you who guess like, what, 3 or 4 alphabets, obviously that's not it. Keep going. Think of the prize. It's a nice prize to want to give out. No, we still don't see it. I will give out the last clue in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It starts with the alphabet P, P for Penang. It's 10 alphabets long. Starts with the alphabet P for Penang. No, I still haven't seen it, but good try, guys. Get the brain juices moving. Come on, I don't want to have to not give this prize away. And if you do get it later on, if you do announce it, please, for the winner, please stay on so that we can get in touch with you just in case. Don't quickly log off and I can't contact you anymore. Not yet, not yet. I don't see the word. Come on, come on. 10 alphabets long, starts with the alphabet P. I've definitely said it more than 5 times when and Mabel is my witness.
Yeah, we have the recording too.
That clue, it was about the journals. Everybody starts scratching their head already, like, I wish I was listening more. Joking. Well, it's good to see that everybody's trying really hard, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I mean, sorry, guys, I don't mean to play you all, but really that I said this word quite a few times. Oh no.
I'm
sad
sorry.
faces all coming out already.
Any more hints, Ken?
Last alphabet is L. 10 words long. First alphabet is P, last alphabet is L. L for langoustines, L for like, L for love.
And related to journal.
And related to journals, exactly. I think we're gonna have to close in 1 minute because we have to obviously let you guys go. We're already overrun. Yep. So just 1 more minute to try.
Ask us to wait.
Guys, I appreciate and I respect the tries. You guys are really trying hard. So thanks for listening. Obviously that really helps. It gives me some confidence to know that you are paying some attention. I appreciate that.
Agree with you.
Maybe it should be 1 minute. I guess I will reveal the word to put everybody out of their misery. And unfortunately, we will have to roll over the prize to the next training session. So if you join the next one, you can obviously, stand a chance to win the same prize again. But I will dedicate this Fitbit to UCSI for our future events in that sense.
Yep.
So maybe just let me know when we reach the minute so I can obviously say the word and let everyone go.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's almost time. So
Okay. 3, 2, 1. I'm so sorry. I don't believe anyone has got the word. Maybe you just check lah, just in case, but I don't believe so. The word is
I don't believe so.
The word is periodical.
I put it in the checkbox.
Yeah,
That is the
exactly.
answer.
Yes, correct. That is the word, periodical. So I've mentioned this a few times. A journal is a form of a periodical publication. So periodical means that the publication happens, obviously throughout a certain period. So every 1 month, every 2 months, every 6 months, or something like that. And that is one of the key differences between what a journal is as compared to a book. So this is more of it's not a technical term, so to speak. It's just a way to explain what a journal is. So hopefully you've learned something or a new word today. If not, or remembered an old word today and what that means in the context of journals. And thank you for joining. I'm so sorry no one has gotten the chance to win it, but join us again for the next training. It could be about this, it could be about anything, but I'm sure to reserve this Fitbit Inspire for you guys at UCSI to win. Or if we're ever invited to your campus to do a formal training in person, I'm sure to be able to do more activities like this where I give you guys chances to not only come and learn with us and also to gain some insight into the areas of research and publishing, but also to win some great prizes with us, just to have a little fun. So thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you for staying on beyond the time. I hope you have a great week ahead, and have a good one.
Just extra note is that there is a survey at the end where I close the webinar. So please help and fill out the survey and let us know how you think about the webinar and what kind of topics you would like to hear from the future. There will be an email sent to you tomorrow with an e-certificate. Recording will be shared by the library. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Take care. Bye.